Hello everybody, Spaceboy99 here, coming back at you with another banger of a video. So as I'm looking around here, I see there's nobody to my left, there's nobody to my right. As far as I know, there's nobody back there. I'm not on a video call with anybody. There's nobody on the other side of the screen. There's nobody around. Nobody's gonna jump in. Nobody's gonna say anything. Why am I having trouble holding the floor? What is it about a video camera, a YouTube channel, and a record button that would make any of this hard? It's right there. All I have to do is talk to people who aren't even really there. YouTube isn't a big deal. They don't give you an audience. They don't give you a big audience, at least. It's just... So what I'm trying to say is, maybe I have been so conditioned in my life that I've gotten used to having so many other people around me who love to talk, who just jump in and help me carry whatever I was going to say, that I don't know how to talk anymore. But that's my point. That's what I want to bring up as a case in point that will help you too, the viewer. Because I'm sure I'm not the only one who suffers from this problem, where we've never learned to hold the floor because we've never really had to. And if we did, we were taught to be so afraid of boring the audience that we couldn't really be authentic. We had to kind of cut ourselves off, so to speak, so as to keep the audience awake or engaged, or even if they were of course going to be awake, if they had a very, very low tolerance for any amount of boredom whatsoever, because it was just a general kind of audience that needed things to just go down smooth like candy. If we've had that kind of audience, or our job, well, I had a job for many years that required me to be scared to death of boring an audience, and I was never very good at it, but I learned to just cut myself off and always be doing another thing, always be doing the next thing. Never really learn to talk, never really learn to hold the floor, because I just couldn't. I was scared to death of boring them. But here, even when I have an audience that's mine, and if they aren't, they can just click away. Nobody cares, man. Nobody even leaves comments until they're sure that your video is getting traction and their comments will be viewed. You don't get troll attack when you're new. They only attack big names, and besides, even if you do, it's on them usually. So what I'm trying to say is, guys, when it seems like there's nothing that should be standing in your way, why is there something? Why is there something when there should be nothing? I'll tell you what that is. That's the implicit realm. You might say it's internal resistance. I'm just going to go ahead and call it the implicit realm, because I don't think that confining it as being internal to you necessarily tells the whole story. It's very social. Even when it's just you, that's very much a social part of you that's active. Even when nobody's around and it's just you talking. That internal resistance is also, it's very interactive. And I think semen retention is going to help you deal with that thing, those things that are supposedly nothing, but where you think there's nothing there, there's actually a very deep, very complex implicit realm. The implicit realm, part of the implicit realm in me somehow assumes through conditioning that somebody else is going to jump in and carry this. They're not. It's just me, but somehow I've been so conditioned socially to think that. We always act in some sense as if we're in a social situation, even when it's just us. Because social behavior is so important to us that basically when it's just us, we're still rehearsing for sociality. And by sociality, I don't mean just friends and things where it's explicitly a mutual relationship. What I mean is that it's everything we do with other people where a relationship is defined, known or understood or implicit to the situation. Anything that we do socially with any awareness is social, and most of our social interactions, I'm going to say, are in the implicit realm. In other words, they're not spoken. We don't, and to talk about them would indicate a problem usually. Like, for example, here I come on here and I tell you the problem I'm having with holding the floor. Or I mention holding the floor. Why? Because I'm having a problem with it. People who just start up their channel and start holding the floor like it's just any other day, they don't talk about holding the floor, now do they? See, what I mean to say is that semen retention helps us become aware of things in the implicit realm that we were ignoring, not because they weren't problems necessarily, but because we would rather ignore them and not talk about them. Because that's kind of the other side of the coin. We kind of assume by not talking about something that is in the implicit realm, we can pretend it's not a problem by ignoring it. And we're always going to be able to get away with that if it's truly in the implicit realm, because by definition, you're only going to talk about it if it's a problem. Likewise, if you don't talk about it, you can always pretend it's not a problem. But you see, what semen retention will do for you is allow you to bring things up from the implicit realm so that you can talk about them as the problem that you'd rather ignore but are not ignoring any longer because you're talking about them. So I have a problem with talking. I really do. This is way harder than it should be. And I am at risk of cutting myself off somehow in the next video, thinking that I have to switch things up, thinking that nobody's listening to me, thinking that my thesis just isn't worth building up over time. Nobody's going to pay attention to the thesis of my channel. It bores them too much, blah, blah, blah. All these things of self-doubt I'm really at risk of doing, but all to myself because of the imagined but deeply ingrained and very built up belief that I can't carry my own channel the way I want to and have it be conversationally valid. There's something in the implicit realm that tells me what I'm going to do is flawed. The thesis that I'm building up and the things that I'm going to talk about are flawed, and I have to cut to something else for protection. And semen retention is helping me prevent myself from doing that. Well, it's helping me be my authentic self who doesn't do that. You can't prevent yourself from preventing yourself. You just be you instead of preventing yourself from being you. So, guys, semen retention helps you hold the floor inherently. I'll tell you why. It's because in the implicit realm is based mostly on asymmetrical social relationships that we take for granted and don't talk about. Even And even in relationships that seem mostly symmetrical, there are asymmetrical parts of them that we don't talk about, usually. Let's say you have a group of friends sitting around a table. I've almost always been that guy who was at their mercy to speak at all. If I did speak, I was cut off. I needed agreement. I just got other people to carry it. And I couldn't start talking about what we were talking about. If I got off track, if I was talking about something else somehow, it was never going to be what we were talking about. The other people set what we were talking about, and I could chip in a little, but I couldn't hold the floor. And I could certainly damn well always be interrupted by someone who was helping me carry it, really, so I could never argue against being interrupted. And I could never really jump in. I was always at everybody's mercy. And whenever I'm off semen retention, that happens again. Now, I'm gaining my social prowess right back very quickly, especially it's not just how long you've been on a streak, it's how dead serious your physiology knows you are about that particular streak that helps the powers come back faster, the so-called powers. But the powers are just the elimination of your own weaknesses. Now, when I say that they're your own, I don't mean to say that they're not social at all. They are your own, but there are so many things about you that you think are internal resistances that have everything to do with your social life. In the asymmetrical relationships that are understood without saying, in the implicit realm. We all know who the cop is. We all know, typically at any given table, we know who's hosting that table, and we know who's been invited to that table. And we also might typically know who would like to sit at that table but isn't. We know that there's another table where that's full of people who are pretending they'd rather not be at this table, or who are settling for that table. All these asymmetrical relationships we keep track of without saying. And semen, when you're a depleted coomer, what that does is it keeps the asymmetrical relationships that you've acquiesced to fossilized in our implicit, undoubted, undisputed social relationships. And speaking of undisputed, it extends even to sports where we don't think social negotiation is happening, such as boxing. I'm going to go in so far as to say that even when Mike Tyson won in boxing, it's not entirely because he was just explicitly a better boxer. I believe there's a very deep sea of implicit relationships under the boxing match, where basically one boxer is acquiescing and leaving it up to the other in an asymmetrical relationship that's developed under the waves, deep in the sea, of who it's up to. In most of our relationships, all human interactions, we negotiate very deeply who it's up to, even very unconsciously, who this is up to. Okay, so if Mike Tyson won, part of that was simply because in our deep unconscious social relationships, one of the boxers left it, or the other boxer left it up to Mike Tyson to decide who was going to win the match. And so he took it. One of them let let Mike Tyson be the supervisor in that role. Way, way deep down. Now there are boxing skills and but there's a reason why uh, he didn't just practice boxing skills, but also semen retention. But I'm also not saying that all of the results of semen retention had their results in physical boxing skills. It didn't just make him a better boxer. It made the other boxer leave things up to him socially. Because that always happens. We can't help that. We know that the boxing match isn't real, right, guys? We know that they're not just two guys out in the jungle meeting and duking it out for something. It's all set up. We know that there's already a deep, implicit set of human decisions that have been made long before that match ever even takes place. And I think that's what a lot of you guys really like about sports, because I'm not interested in sports at all, boxing included, but I'm guessing that you guys who are into sports, by the time you tune into that game and start listening, if you don't like that, if you're not interested already, it's too late to start liking it. By the time you tune into that station and start listening to that game, you must have already been interested in all the myriad of implicit human decisions that you know must have been made up to that point. Because otherwise, you might as well just be listening to some random number generator making up moves and being excited about that. And you never are, so it's by the game is the tip of the iceberg. You guys are already interested. You must be. See, that's what I'm trying to tell you. That's how all human social relationships work, and that's what semen retention helps you with. I want you guys to start taking your attention off this biochemistry about the dopamine and the testosterone. Sure, you can pay attention to that if you want, but it's just explicit science that we've come to expect in order to make anything sound more authoritative. And it's always going to parallel and correlate with what we have found anyway. We're never going to find, oh, the dopamine system went this way and the things that the dopamine system is related to in our experience went the other way. They're always just correlates. Sure, they have to be there to fluff out a YouTube channel and fill out a page and make it feel like it's scientific. And now we've entered an age where we need a scientific basis for everything. Or we've made ourselves feel like we need scientific basis for everything, even when we really don't. Those are just correlates. We already knew what wanting was. We already knew what liking was. And if we found chemicals that didn't correlate with those things, we'd say those weren't the chemicals of wanting and liking. So what does it really tell us? Guys, what I'm trying to say is, well, I think you know what I'm trying to say, don't you? Come on, you've got to, by now. Guys, semen retention is going to help you be at the positive end of your implicit social relationships, where people are going to leave things up to you earlier. One of my experiences on semen retention involved myself saying something that was kind of a non sequitur, something kind of quirky. I'm weird. I say weird things. But the lady said, "Why are we talking about this around the table?" And the implication there was that we were indeed talking about this. She didn't say, "What are we talking about?" as if she had lost track. She knew what we were talking about, and I had determined what we were talking about. It had implicitly been left up to me, because I had gained so much power in the implicit realm through semen retention. It's raining here, so I'll try to wrap this up before you only hear the rain. But another thing is, if a woman has a tendency, for example, in a particular setting, to always be trying to somehow stand in front of you, that's the implicit realm. She doesn't explicitly decide to do that because there's something in her, I don't want to say chemistry because that makes it too explicit, but there's something in her implicit nature, unconscious nature, that makes her tend to do that. She's just doing what attraction does. She's not doing that because she's attracted to you and decided to. That's just what attraction does. You see, one more thing before I go here. Emotions are not separated from their effects. It's just that we separate the internal effects, supposedly, from the external effects of emotions. So we think that an emotion is just something you feel sometimes, but not something that has any effect. But no, what we meant in that case is just that the effects of the emotion were internal, and it didn't have an immediate social effect on others. But emotions are their effects. Emotions are not separate from their effects. And a felt emotion is the effect of having that emotion. You have that emotion because it's affecting you. That's how you know you have it. The experience of an emotion is the effect of the emotion. Okay, an emotion is something you have and do and are affected by all at once. And see, there's how does that tie in? Well, what I'm trying to say is that you guys see, I'll get better at talking as I go on. You guys gotta be forgiving of the brother, right? You know, I'm dropping my thoughts here. Not everybody thinks like this. You gotta appreciate a brother, you know, sometimes. I'm getting better, okay? This is better than just trying to entertain you with some cutaway to some stupid thing I was talking about yesterday. I'm really trying here. I'm trying to hold the floor. I'm trying to get better at holding the floor, while not worrying so much about boring people. If they don't want to watch me, they just won't. I don't have to worry about that. But on the other hand, I'll know that the people who are watching me really want to listen to me. See, that kind of authenticity that you crave in the first place it's helped by semen retention. People not on semen retention want fake things at a much higher rate than people on semen retention. And that's because they just want things in the explicit realm. Right? Like if you're a YouTuber off semen retention, you're much more likely to just want views rather than to really want explicit authentic views from people who really want to genuinely watch you. And they might sift through some boredom a little bit, but everybody's willing to do that on the way to having something valuable. If you can't stand 1 second of possible boredom, that means that you really don't see value in this guy. See what I'm saying? Maybe I'll clear that up too. I don't know if that's a good or bad thing to sometimes say. You see what I'm saying? But see, semen retention allows you to become aware of things like that. Alright, gentlemen, I'll let you go here. Hope to see you again tomorrow.